We've seen many aspects of vision now, so far, and they've differed in the way that they understand what's going on in vision and in seeing. Seeing, most generally, is a kind of activity by which we explore and interact with the world around us. And any account of vision that is continuous between humans and other animals who have very similar visual systems must be independent of images. Images are not part of any animal's world, and images are a very recent part of the human world, only a few hundred years old, really. That there are images that are older, but people's lives have not been saturated with images until the time of the printing press and the Renaissance and various historical developments. The photograph hugely changed us. The photograph is an image collected from a single fixed viewing point, what I'll call static monocular vision. So one eye, fixed point, no movement. Part of the power that the photograph has comes from the previous history of images, in which a technique called linear perspective was developed in the Renaissance, so in the 14th century. This is a particularly important kind of visual representation, and it's left its stamp on us. We cannot think visually without images anymore. But we have to remember that this is an artificial technique for producing a form of formal representation. It's not a window to reality. Here's an example of an engraving done that illustrates the work, the formality needed to create a drawing in linear perspective. You can see the artist on the right who's looking through a grid, and the grid between himself and the model corresponds to a grid on which he's drawing, so he's copying square for square. And if we were to rotate this scene 90 degrees, this is what the artist is doing. He's looking through this grid and copying square for square mechanically. This is the origin of linear perspective, which is a rather more complicated topic than we're treating here. And the photograph greatly enhanced and powered this up, it leveled it up. This is one of the earliest photographs. It's from the 1830s. So it was in the 19th century that photography came around. And of course, by the end of the 19th century, there was lots of photographs, and then there was printed photographs, print media, and then we got the movies, and now you're surrounded with images in a way that's quite unusual in human history. We can see some of the difference between static monocular viewing and human seeing in this example. Here's a shot from Google Earth taken over Dún Laoghaire Harbour in 2008, in June 2008. And at that time in Dún Laoghaire, there was a festival called the Festival of World Cultures, a wonderful festival. And as it happened, Dún Laoghaire was photographed from space, from the satellites. And we can zoom in on this photograph. And there on the bottom of the East Pier in Dún Laoghaire, you can see something coming into view. This is a large chalk drawing that was done for the festival at the time. So we're looking at it from above here. This is not the way it was normally expected to be looked at. We just happen to have a chance view of this from space. The artist involved is Edgar Müller, and he does these large format chalk drawings. Now, I don't know if you can see what this drawing is like when we're looking at it from overhead. If you had your eye in just the right position on the ground, this is what you saw instead. Look at that chasm. It's a remarkable 3D, stunningly compelling image of an abyss. As it happens, I was there in 2008 and I saw this for myself, and it didn't look like this. This is not what it looked like. And the artist himself knew that. He had arranged a viewing spot in front of the drawing with an iron pole and a little hole, and the right way to view this was to close one eye, position your other eye carefully at just the right spot, and then this is what you saw. Because of that, it's very easy to photograph, and the photograph captures that static monocular viewing impression. As soon as you opened the second eye or you moved around again, the whole thing became flat. This is an example of a kind of image constructed to be viewed from a particular point or in a particular way. It's called an anamorph. And here's another example of some anamorphic art by the Italian artist Felice Varini. You can see, as you walk around this building, you see that there are red stripes somewhere, and as you're walking around, you can find the spot. There's a correct spot to place your eye, and when you place your eye in just that spot, then you see that red ellipse. Walk around and it goes away. So these anamorphs illustrate the difference between static monocular viewing and fully embodied active viewing as done by a human. And we noted in the last video how most optical illusions require you to keep your head still and to stare from a single point, often at a fixation cross. This is one of the means by which they work. So an optical illusion rests on a kind of a pathological kind of stillness, of inactivity. So as powerful as photographs are, monocular static viewing should not be taken as representative of seeing. And when we try to understand vision, it's best to get images out of our head and to think instead of cats and birds. All of these have visual systems not unlike our own, and images play no role in them. I'm going to show you now an illusion, a very famous illusion, which requires building a crazy room called an Ames room. And the building is made to be viewed through a peephole. So this illusion only works from a static monocular viewing point again. So you view like a voyeur, you view this room through a peephole, and the room appears to be perfectly normal from that point of view. If you were able to move around, you would see it's not at all a normal room. But this leads to some fun and games. Let's have a look at an Ames room.
La Casa de la Ciencia.
Lovely exhibit. apparently zany perspective that you get here is obtained from a fixed point of view. There were a few cinematic cuts to close-ups of faces. They belong in a different world, really. The illusion that the room is of a normal shape is entirely misleading, but it's constructed to be viewed from this one privileged position. So that's some more things we can learn from illusions, and we've got one more video on illusions to come.